My goodness. Rachel, Jimmy. One more time. Hand of applause. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
What a joy and a pleasure and a privilege to be back here today and with each and every one of you, with all of us. Dakota and Minnesota are enjoying what they enjoy in January for wintertime. And I was in a conversation on the phone Friday, a conference call with a woman from Fort Collins, Colorado, that I've been in a working relationship with, sojourn guiding client of mine for, I started to count back since late 1996. Her name is Martha. Martha and I have been in touch at least twice a month, once a month, once a week, and then on to every other week now. And in the conversation Friday, she was reflecting back and kind of looking over her shoulder and celebrating some things that have occurred over the holiday season, and even started to clock back years prior. And all of the time that I've known her and been in conversation with the intimate sides of her life and living and her marriage and her children and her grandchildren, I've kind of watched everyone grow and evolve and expand. Experienced it firsthand through her and have come to meet many members of her family. And a story that is brand new to me and I hadn't really been aware of or planned to share today came to me on Friday during that phone conversation. So Martha's grandma of a little boy named Wilson. And Wilson and his mom named Sarah live in near San Francisco. And just shortly around Christmas time, Sarah and little Wilson were having a contemplative conversation. And this is so much about keeping the new year new through the eyes and the experience and the consciousness of children. So here's how the conversation went. And Martha had told me in dialogue, had shared this experience, and then she sent me the email that Sarah sent her. And Sarah just articulated the little exchange between her and 4-year-old Wilson. It goes as follows. Wilson, during prayer, I can't see God. Sarah, that's true, but you can feel her. Put one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly. Close your eyes. Think about what it feels like to be loved and to love others. Can you feel it? And little Wilson, yes, I can feel it. Mom, think about peace and what it feels like to be peace. That's God. You can feel God. God, it feels like that, peace and love. Now there was silence while Wilson lied still, focused, just like Mom said, his hands on his heart and belly. And then Wilson, in play. God feels like play. Mom, yes. Wilson, and energy. Mom, parentheses, stunned silence. Then, yes, Wilson, God is play and energy. Now, not quite the end of the story. A few minutes pass. And Wilson, Wilson says, remember that song we sang under the moon at Christmas time? Wilson began singing, Fire my spirit. Fire my spirit. Whoa! I continue to be blessed and ministered to, taught through the wisdom and the innocence of children and their connectedness rather directly to that presence and power, that immediate here and nowness of that life and aliveness of the Christ indwelling each and every one of us. And so the invitation I extend, by way of Wilson's teaching, is that we also lace from the ranks and through the experience and the wise little being that speaks through all children, that we, as Jesus asked us to do, taught us to do, become ye as little children. And to paraphrase from there, and it is by that means and by that way, through that consciousness, that we, as adults now, reconnect to our wholeness and the full intention of what divine plan has in store for us. Can't think of a better way to keep the new year new, can you? Become again in the ways and by way of the likeness, the innocence of the Spirit, of knowing, as children do, that there is really no separation between them and us and all that is, the beloved mighty I am Spirit, in this very room. I love that song when the musicians do it, in this very room. Right now. There is nowhere where we can be where God is not. It's impossible. Isn't that a lovely truth to remind ourselves of? There's nowhere where we can be where God is not. To say it another way, everywhere we are, wheresoever we may travel, to the ends of the earth and back again. God says, I am. And you shall find me there. You shall experience me here, in this very room. Another truth teaching that I recently reintroduced myself to. And it first came to me by way of a greeting card. And I don't remember where it came from. It was years ago. And I salted it away in some of my special reading places. As Carol, my wife, would say, Richard, you have way too many special little reading places. And you're everywhere, even on the dining room table, often, all over the place. So this was in one of those special spots. And I dug it out and brought it here today. And the quote is attributed to Buddha. None less of a presence and spiritual teacher among those that we hear in unity, respect, and open our minds and hearts to many, many diverse teachings. I was just having a conversation with Peggy earlier this morning. And a minister friend of mine and friend of all of ours, many of you know, Reverend Barbara Winter Martin, from, I almost said Eau Claire, Wisconsin, and that's Sandy McKinney, Reverend Sandy. But no, Reverend Barbara is near St. Cloud in Sartell, Minnesota, Unity of Sartell. And it was Barbara that I first heard say, and we're going to get to Buddha's quote in just a minute, but we're taking a little side trip. I thought we'd let you know, a side trip to Sartell, Minnesota, before we go to Tibet. It was Barbara who, I think she was given, mused these words, and put together a faith statement that so encapsulated for me, if unity were to be explained, or if we were to be asked, what's unity, by someone, somewhere, sometime, here's the answer I hope I remember to give, like Barbara said, quote, in unity, we are culturally Christian and spiritually diverse. Culturally Christian, deep roots in Christian teaching, and the metaphysical understandings therefrom and thereof, and we are spiritually diverse, honoring many paths. Truth is to be found everywhere. Back to Buddha's quote. Now, I wouldn't dare just share this right out any old place, and you'll understand why in a minute. we need to have it be in context and then explain and elaborate a little bit after the quote. I'm just warning you. That's a preview. Quote, believe nothing, no matter where you read it or who has said it, not even if I have said it, unless it agrees with your own reason and your own common sense. End quote. So says Buddha. Now I'm doing this not because to be cute, but it's in a circle. So I forgot to say that. It's printed in a circle. And I think it's that way for a reason. It invites the reader to step out of being non-linear, kind of park that left-brainedness that we in the West so often can. It serves us well, being left-brained is, our cognition and rational and logistical thinking and our goal-setting selves. That's all well and good. We need it. I wouldn't remember to pay the light bill if I didn't have it once a month. So left-brainedness, and by way of the intellect, we need it to be operational on the planet. Of course we do. But right-brainedness, or sort of that soul self of us, that intuitive part of our being, is able to be more invited upward and outward when we're, and this is just a little tip I learned through neuro-linguistic psychology, neuro-linguistic programming, when we allow ourselves not to be trapped by a straight line between A and B. In other words, we become non-linear long enough to just open a doorway to that again, corridor that the presence and power within us is through our intuition, not our intellect. And I know most of us know that, but I forget it. Now and then, I just do. I really forget it, here and there. About 400 times a day. I forget that to understand and to know and to, like Wilson said, I can feel it. God is play. God is song. And what were Wilson's words right at the end? Fire my spirit. The fire in our beings. That life and aliveness, that force. In Taoism it's called qi. It's that vibratory essence that rings us up and brings us out in full regalia of life and living. And centered with our complete strength and power, as well as our gentleness and our understanding and our wisdom and our kindness, and when needed, our ferociousness to defend that which is right and good, and when called for, that gentlest spirits of kindness and love and compassion. And we are all of that, are we not? A wonderful blend of all that is. It's called you. I ask you, if you only remember one thing today from the whole service, with the exception of Rachel and Jenny's music, I want you to remember that it's the you, it's the us, it's the we. The you, the me, and your chair. That wonderful blend of all that is. That feels pretty magical to me. That you are, we are. I mean, as incarnate beings, we're miracles in manifestation. Nothing less than that. Please take that in your hip pocket with you as a reminder and a remembrance. But that's truly who and what you are, truly who and what we are. One more story. And by the way, storytelling. Telling stories to one another. Whether it's a story about a real-life event like Wilson and Sarah, or whether it's something that is of a nature that has been written. So it can be real or nonfiction, or it can be fictitious. It can be in the way of metaphors and parables, like Jesus and other master teachers were so masterful at utilizing. And so, telling one another and listening to each other's stories just to take that longer pause every once in a while. And so two things remaining in the message today. One, and I during seminary from 1993 to 1996 in New Brighton, Minnesota, United Theological Seminary, and I was a full-time student there, and Carol and I were living on campus, and she had done a mid-career change, and she was off being a full-time student to become licensed as an occupational therapist. And so in our mid-40s, we're full-time students. And I had the occasion to one of my schoolmates that I got to meet was from Nigeria, and Ephraim from Nigeria, and he spoke okay English, but I had to listen really careful to make sure I was understanding correctly what he was conveying. And on one day between classes, we were on our way to the cafeteria. Ephraim and I are walking together, and he would stop about 5 or 6 times. We only had a half hour, and Ephraim kept stopping. And another student would be coming by, and he'd reach out his hand, and he'd say, "Well, how are you?" And then he'd say, "No, really, how are you?" And he'd just pause a long time to do what? To connect with the people in the hallway. Or what I thought was overly long, lingering time. Come on, Ephraim, I'm left brain now. I'm left brain, we're on a time schedule, we only have a half hour to eat and get back to class. But what was Ephraim doing? He was being in the Spirit. He was being heart to heart, touching into the presence of the other person. He was saying and conveying to each one that he stopped to visit with, I witness you. I see you. I honor who and what you are. Right here. Pause really to greet. Really to meet and greet. To see truly. And Ephraim's gaze, by the way, he went right in. Not being invasive, just what's the old saying? The eye is the window of our soul. The eyes are the window of our soul. And Ephraim knew that. And he knew that when he looked in any of our eyes and just paused to, and what I found out later is that he was doing a silent prayer. He was not only saying, "Hi, how are you? How's the wife and kids?" He was blessing each person. Just quickly, just quietly. I love you. I love you. He later told me. But here's the story I was on my way to tell. So there was 3 stories in a row. I didn't really plan that. But storytelling, remembering back in each of our lives on those, in around and about those extra special times. So in the moment that many of our life events are happening, I don't, and many of us maybe don't always understand the fullness and the richness of that which is happening right here, right now. And Ephraim taught me an important lesson that day. Slow down. Take your time, or somebody else will. That's a cute one, isn't it? I didn't make that up. But Ephraim re-taught me that day. Take our time to do what we really want to be doing. To focus on that which brings us the most life and aliveness and joy. Or somebody or something else will take our time. Perhaps in a direction we don't want it to go. But Ephraim would often stop in his country of origin, away from the village. And he had a small herd of cows. That was his livelihood back in Nigeria. And he would make it a point to stop along the way at his neighbors' huts. This was very rural and deep Africa, that part of Nigeria that is still his home. And he would just knock, and whoever would answer, one of the children, one of the adults that were friends or fellow farmers of his, or whoever came from behind the door of the hut, he would once again, he would just let them know that he was passing by. And he would ask, is there anything I can do for you today? Is there anything I can do for you today? And sometimes the person or persons would, oh, thanks, Kiefer, for dropping by like you did yesterday, and ask me that. And I didn't have anything then, but today I really could use your hand for a few minutes doing whatever I want. What a wonderful reminder also, is it not? When I'm in the consciousness, let me back up and start it this way. When I'm in the consciousness of whether I say it verbally to any of you or not, when I'm passing by, when I'm in a restaurant, when I'm on the phone with a client, wherever you or I might find ourselves, what an empowering thing, that tiny little nuance that for the other person can be so huge in meaning, to touch their soul, to witness them in a way, I see you, I behold the presence and power in you without ever having to say these words. It's just make that connection. And then we might, not always, but we might say, is there anything I can do for you today? What a wonder-filled, better, more balanced, peaceful world we would have, a household we would have, community we would have. And that's what I ask of each and every one of us. I first ask it of myself. Wow, I'm willing to take on, still into the new year, it's still January, we're still at the front end of 2016, as one of my aspirations and goals is to remember Wilson's teachings and Ephraim's and the Buddha's. And when the Buddha says, I'll close with this, when the Buddha says believe nothing, and then he went on to the rest of the potent words of wisdom, how I interpret, and I think unity metaphysics would allow us to open another page in that interpretation of believe nothing. What he's saying in the affirmative is hold our beliefs lightly. Notice our pictures and let them go. Now, that teaching does not say, be without faith. No, in fact, it's saying being very faith-filled, faithful in knowing that the organic nature of the universe, that the organic nature of our beings, as Rachel's song said, life has changed. Everything is morphing and metamorphosing. And believing nothing, but being faith-filled totally, that the giftedness and the greater good of God is on its way to us now. That we can free ourselves actually to embrace and open further to the greater miracle abundance that God has for us when we're not locked down or pinned in by any kind of just one or two or three. For me, sometimes beliefs can become rigid. And so what Buddha's saying is, when we believe not, open up to all possibilities, to the regal nature of what Spirit is ready to bequeath upon us right now, that greater understanding, that illumination, that ha-ha, that takes us in and beyond our linear thinking self and throws open the door to our heartful, intuitive nature, which is, again, that corridor to the indwelling Christ, living right here, right there, within each and every one of us. With that, I say, Amen.